or fetters. That would have to be because he had often been bound. Okay, that's what I could do. I'll continue on with Mark. No man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had often been bound with fetters and chains. And that's where I can continue. In fetters, and he broke the bands, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him. Okay, so that's how it would work. So I'll continue on with Mark, because that he had been often bound with fetters. Is that also in Luke? In fetters. So fetters is both. Fetters. Chains is twice in Mark, so I guess it'd be alright to use it twice here. Fetters and chains, still both. And comes a little before fetters in Luke, but it's still there. And the chains had been plucked asunder by him. Luke says, and he broke the bands. I think I like just saying he broke the bands and plucked asunder the chains. Maybe I can do that, yeah. And he broke the bands, so instead of by him, I could say both. And so this is continue on with Luke, and he broke the bands and was driven of the devil into the wilderness. Or I could go into and plucked asunder from Mark. Yeah, I could use and from the beginning of the sentence, plucked asunder from the end, and then chains back from the beginning. And plucked asunder the chains. Okay, this is weird. Mark says he was bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broke in pieces. Luke, he was kept with bounds and in fetters, and broke the bands. No mention of the fetters, but he broke the bands. So Mark, it just says he plucked the chains and broke the fetters. So perhaps broke the bands. In Luke, bands would be fetters. So then I wouldn't have to put 3. I could say he broke in pieces the fetters. Otherwise I'd have to use broke in from Mark. I'm not going to use bands because that's the first time that word was introduced. They already spoke about fetters and chains. So I'm just going to keep using fetters and chains, fetters and chains. So I'll change this to fetters from Mark. So hold on, then should I start with plucked asunder the chains and he broke fetters in pieces? Yeah, because the chains are not mentioned in Luke. It just goes right into the bands or the fetters. So yeah, I think I'll do that. He's often bound with fetters and chains, and he plucked asunder the chains and broke the fetters in pieces. Yeah, that'll be fine. And he broke the... I'll just put that after. He had been often bound with fetters and chains, and plucked asunder the chains. The order from Luke broke the fetters from Mark instead of bands from Luke, and then still from Mark in pieces. Neither could any man tame him. Well, if I'm going to do it like this, I could just leave it in the order that Mark has it. Instead of "and he." Oh, that's right. And he would have to go before "plucked asunder." And he plucked asunder the chains. And broke the fetters in pieces. Or I could just leave it how Mark says it. And the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces. Yeah, leaves out the confusion. I don't have to change anything around. And the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and I'm not going to put "he broke" from Luke. I'm just going to choose all from Mark now, and just add whatever is both. And the fetters broken in pieces. Neither can any maintain it. There's not really any reason to switch it around. Mark has all the words. It reads fine. Luke is just less descriptive. The chains have been plucked asunder by him. Yeah, that's a better explanation than "kept bound with chains." Okay, so "bound with" is both. It's just very out of order for Luke. Bound with chains. Fetters and chains. So should I have "fetters and chains" from the order of Mark, or "chains and in fetters" from Luke? I think it should go "chains and in fetters" like in Luke, because earlier they say "no man could bind him, no, not with chains," and then the explanation, because that he had been often bound with chains and fetters, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken pieces. So that I think would be better. Or if it's the other way, "no man could bind him, no, not with chains," because he had often been bound with fetters and chains. The fetters should come last because the chains were first mentioned. So then the explanation should be, because we did bind him with chains and also fetters, but he plucked asunder the chains and broke the fetters to pieces. Yeah, so I'm going to do with that. Often bound with chains and. So chains, then and. It's all the same, it's just a different order. And now "in fetters" is only Luke, right? Bound with fetters and chains, and the chain, yeah. So that "in" is only Luke. I probably should have gone a bit more slowly, because I kind of just reversed my entire original plan. Might have saved myself some work. And he broke the bands. And the chains have been plucked asunder. And this "and" is considered right before the fetters. The bands are the fetters, most likely, because he broke. So, and the is later on. So, and the, not fetters, but and the is both. Now, broken, yeah, I could say "broke" is both. I'll leave the "n" only Luke. Broke the bands, and was. Okay, the rest of it is another sentence. And was driven of the devil into the wilderness. I thought that should come after. Neither could any man tame him. And he was driven into the wilderness. So that can be another sentence. I know it doesn't come after a period in Luke, but it's already a very long sentence. It begins all the way at "for oftentimes I had caught him, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because he had also been bound with chains and fetters, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces, neither could any man tame him." So that's pretty long. I'll have this next sentence, yes, from Luke, but as if it's its own sentence. last parts from Mark saying that he would cry aloud and cut himself. So all that will be another. So I'll start with this. And was driven of the devil to the wilderness. Oh, I never used the he from Luke. And he broke the bands. As I say, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him. So I still have a he. I could use that he later, and he was driven to the wilderness. Yeah, I use broke and also the and the. I don't use the he, and I think that would fit perfectly. It's a little out of order. I'll explain that. But it would fit well, because this sentence ends with, and he broke the bands and was driven of the devil into the wilderness. You don't have to have he twice. But because I end the statement after no man could tame him from Mark, it goes, and the chains have been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces. Neither could any man tame him. So this is a new sentence. It needs, and he was driven of the devil into the wilderness. Yeah, so I will leave it like that. And now continue with Mark. And always night and day, he was... Well, maybe I could have used that one. Yeah. I'll say this he is both, because I won't use it later. I'm not going to use it twice. I could have used it the other way. I could say and was driven. And I could save that for after. And always night and day, he was in the mountains. But he needs to be driven into the wilderness. Before he's always in the mountains. So I think it's better like this, even though I have to move the he to earlier, out of the place in Mark to the earlier place in Luke. Mark. And always, night and day. I'll skip that he because I already used it, just go right to was in the mountains. And in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. There. I just realized that both of these sentences are complete sentences. They end with a period. I can't put a comma after and he was driven of the devil into the wilderness to continue and always night and day was in the mountains and in the tombs. It's a brand new sentence. It begins with a capital letter. It has to have all the parts of the sentence there. So it wouldn't be proper to just have this one sentence. And always night and day it was in the mountains and in the tombs crying and cutting himself with stones. Who? He was. That he has to be there. So I gotta put it back. And always night and day changing this he so that it's only from Luke. Just a short mention that I changed it back from what I originally said.